with Michael J. Fox, and he was talking about obviously his Parkinson's, and what he said was, gratitude makes optimism possible. Isn't that beautiful? So simple. Gratitude makes optimism possible. And I am so grateful for this community. I'm so grateful for Nathan and that beautiful song and more songs to come. And I'm optimistic for this lovely little community. So thank you for joining us today. And my name is Angela Clark. You all know me by now, I think. And as a representative of CSL White Rock, I recognize that I am a settler on this land. And I'm grateful and honored to live and operate on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. And other members of this gathering are working and living on the traditional land of many other Indigenous peoples. At CSL White Rock, we're committed to a vision of a loving, vibrant world that works for all. And we're committed to uplifting Indigenous voices, respecting traditional lands, and working with our communities towards reconciliation. I think the First Peoples who continue, to live and care for Mother Earth. And yesterday was Earth Day, so we all need to cup our hands for Mother Earth for sure, and all that is above and all that is below. CSL White Rock is an inclusive community, spiritual community and learning center, and we honor the many paths to the divine. And our teaching is based on 4 cornerstone beliefs. There is one life that is the source of all life and all things. We are spirit having a human experience. Nothing outside us needs to change to be happy. And we are here to walk each other home. So again, welcome everybody. And yay, now I can stop talking and give you back to Nathan. I promise this time I won't press the wrong button. I'll stay online. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you, Angela. The second song I'd like to share with you this morning is a song of mine called I Can See You, and it's very much tied into what our talk this morning will be about. I can see you, I can see you, I can see you, I can see you. You made your debut, all shiny and new, your heart and hands open wide. You wore a big grin and drank it all in, happiness justified, till the king and queen in their final scene scared away that shine. And I can see you barely breathing and still in a tidal wave. I can see you huddled deep in the dark of a tiny cave, alone and displaced. You painted your face and learned how to work the crowd. You mastered the art of playing it smart, and feelings were not allowed. Since that final scene with the king and queen, that's been your solemn vow. And I can see you holding court with a smile and a lonely heart. I can see you crying under the mask as you live that part. I think it's time you had your say. It's no longer yesterday. You'll be safe now, and I promise I'll be with you all the way. You can laugh and sweat and shake, you can cry until you ache, you can kick and scream and fight, and keep me up all night. I will listen while you do, and remember what is true. You're not the one to blame, and it's time to end this game, 'cause I can see you, I can see you, I can see you, I can see you, I can see you barely breathing and still in that tidal wave. see you huddled deep in the dark of that tiny little cave. Yes, I can see you, I can see you, I can see you, I can see you. Ooh.
Amazing. Thank you, Nathan. Wow, some great choices of music this morning. It's calling you home. Yeah, fabulous. We're so fortunate to have our musicians with us and how much richness they bring to our gatherings. So we thank you, Nathan, and we're glad that we can support our musicians as well outside and see your other shows and do that. So thank you. So welcome again, everyone. Just for the recording, my name is Reverend Tamara Rossander. Still, again, getting used to that stepping into that new way of being, into this new possibility of what is next for our community, what is next for me as well, and showing up as we're talking about being seen and seeing others in a way of vulnerability. And the topic that today is about seeing and being seen, but it can also be our greatest challenge, yet it's also one of our greatest desires. So how can we do both? How can we do both? You guessed it. It's both. It takes a willingness. We have to be willing to be vulnerable, which in turn we can open a door and live our life out loud. We can open that door and live in a way that is what I'm working towards right now. Is we're living in a way that I'm showing up and making changes in my own life, in the life of hopefully others, and making changes with the teaching of science of mind and how much it's needed out there. There's so many things going on in the world that this teaching can help address and move forward. And Howard Thurman says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And that is the part about being in vulnerability and being in spiritual community. Being in spiritual community leads us to growth, to challenge ourselves to maybe accept people as they are and not hoping that they'll be in a certain way. It challenges us for our own inner work, to look inside and see what needs to shift within me or shift within so I'm never looking on that outside. It's always an inside job. So vulnerability can be that building block for a thriving and healthy community. We'll see to the extent that we're able to nurture vulnerability in ourselves, we'll see that outpictured within our communities and within our relationships. So authenticity and connection and belonging are possible when we bring our whole selves to life while creating safe and affirming spaces for others to do the same. It is in the power of vulnerability that's actualized through living out loud. And that's the quote by Marianne Williamson. As we let our light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we liberate from our own fear, our present actually liberates others. And has any of you told a story about a personal thing in your life and you've shared it with somebody and they've said, thank you, because that makes me feel like I'm not alone, that I've gone through a similar situation, or that I can understand, or, oh, that gives me a different perspective. right? So when we're sharing ourselves and showing up, that we're doing this together and sharing ourselves and our hearts, that's when the shift happens. That's when we start making that ripple out. And I want to read one of our declaration of principles. And this is what Ernest Holmes wrote. And if you get the Science of Mind magazine, there's all of our guiding principles at the beginning. But the one that he wrote that we're going to talk about today is, we believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible and absolute and self-existent cause. The one manifests itself in and through all of creation, but it's not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of the divine. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of divine, of God. So it's that principle of oneness. Now, oneness doesn't mean sameness, but yet we can relate to others who've had similar experiences. But it's the understanding that the manifest world is the individualized expression of the one. As part of the manifest world, we're each our own unique configuration of the divine expressing in this moment. So each of us are part of that one thing. And that is life itself. And life always knows what it's doing, as Michael Singer says. Life always knows what it's doing. So I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were telling me about an experience they had with one of their good friends about that they had a brain tumor. And so they went, when they found out that they had this brain tumor, they were in law school, they were living here in Vancouver, and going towards getting their degree, and they had to stop all of that. Their friends packed up their apartment, they moved back home with their parents, and they went into this isolation for about a year, where they just kind of read and stayed in their room and just kind of stopped life. And what the interesting thing, because of course, we're talking about vulnerability, and I was saying about what our topic was when they told me this story, and they said, what happened is when their friends stopped isolating themselves and finally shared their story of what they were actually going through with their brain tumor, they said that the people's responses were so overwhelming. So they opened up and told them how they truly feel and why they loved this person, and something deeply touching within their words that they'd never actually shared before. And it sent this chill through my friend's body. They said it was so nice to hear actually how this person felt about them and what they meant to them. And it's sometimes I wonder why we rarely tell people how much we care about them, and why do we wait for moments of strife or illness or loss to express those things? Why do we, what is that sometimes we're afraid that we hold ourselves back from sharing our heart or sharing our story with others so that they can let them in? We can let them in. So when we're reaching out and being vulnerable, this person said that, they just felt so much more connected with their friend. And they felt that they would be there for their friend, and their friend actually felt better about reaching out and telling them, and said that they felt even more confident and sure that they were going to get through this. And sure enough, in the following 6 months, they went back and the brain tumor hadn't grown, so which was great. So the doctor was sure at this point that that it wasn't cancerous. But it took that door of opening up, that person stepping out of being afraid about their illness, being afraid of not, and stopping themselves and hiding. But here they moved into the world, shared with their friend, and we're able to open up into different possibilities. So to me, that is really being seen and showing up in that. And then my friend was able to see the other person as well. So one question I always ask is, what, for me, why did I choose to join a spiritual community? I don't know if any of you have ever asked yourself that, but what is it that drew you to be part of something like this? And I know we all have our own reasons for joining, that call, that urge within us, knowing that there was something more, knowing that there was something out there that we needed, and then being able to find a place to have these discussions, to talk about it. And that's really being vulnerable, because the way that we look at the world sometimes isn't necessarily the way everybody else looks at the world, especially as we call ourselves religious scientists, believing that we are part of God, that God is right here. As Reverend Terry used to say, God is closer than that heartbeat within us. And that can be a bit scary too, that endless possibility, that endless power that's within us as us, and operates as an individualized expression of the one mind. And that we all show up in these different ways of being. But it's seeing ourselves as part of, and in fostering communities where vulnerability is nurtured, it's important to understand the role of our own personal reflection. And sometimes it will be, maybe I've said the wrong thing, or I've misstepped a little bit, and I can just own up to that and say, wow, you know what, I really messed up there, or I'm sorry, I wish I would have listened or communicated with you differently. A lot of times, I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't want anybody to fix things for me. I just want them to hear me. I just want to be heard and listened to, and have somebody go, okay, I hear you, I understand. And then that's usually for me where the divine guidance will come in, and then I'll get an answer for the situation or what is next. When I tune in and listen, rather than maybe always wanting to get, oh, well, what would you do if this happened? Or what would that do? You can use people as a sounding board, but it's trusting yourself and doing that own reflection. And it's letting go of some of our old ideas and limiting beliefs and biases that we carry around on a daily basis that impact us, how vulnerability can show up in our lives and those around us. Then we're called to an expand awareness of our connection with the whole, and how intentionally perspective taking and personal reflection can bolster a sense of connection and belonging. So that's when we're seeing ourselves. And when we're seeing others doesn't mean seeing them as we think they should be or what they may be in the future. Instead, it requires that present moment. It's looking at people through the eyes of the living spirit. And maybe it's looking not through the lens of judgment or comparison, but through a gentle gaze of awareness that just like us, each person we see as a unique expression of the one. And when we begin to practice seeing others in this way, the result is the creation of communities and spaces where we're all invited to show up authentically, and in our messiness and in our perfection, however it is that we show up. And we're also called to recognize the challenges, the vulnerability that may arise, and address them head on without downplaying, bypassing, or ignoring them. Through this, we create a vibration of acceptance, honoring, and respect, which invites and makes more space for vulnerability. Ernest Holmes says, "We see in each other the reflection or the manifestation of the everlasting life, and each is an individualized embodiment of it. Remember, the kingdom of heaven is already in us. We are in it. It is only as we are in harmony with that we awake to it." It's that quote that he always, that is talked about in the Science of Mind of, we're already in heaven right here, right now. And sometimes we might not think that that's so true, depending on our circumstances. And yet it's knowing that, diving into that absolute truth of who we really are, that we are part of that one mind. And then it's also seeing the space in between. It's the interesting thing about vulnerability is when we allow ourselves to be seen, we invite others to do the same. In this exchange, we find a beautiful way to create communities that nurture vulnerability, connection, and belonging. This is not achieved with words alone, but through intentional action. This is not to say that we'll always get it right, but vulnerability makes space for us to try, miss the mark, reflect, and then try again. It also invites us to listen and not waiting, again, just goes back, not waiting for that opportunity to fix or prove ourselves right. I don't know about you, but I know sometimes I can get in that, oh, I know what's best, I know what's right, because I didn't wake up this morning going, I want to be wrong today about something. I like to be right. I like to think that the way I'm thinking is the way, but it's not necessarily. So it's that this is vulnerability makes space for us to try and miss the mark and reflect and then try again. And again, waiting invites us to listen, and listening instead to understand. That piece when we can really tune in to what somebody's saying and follow through. So when we're able to show up in this way and create space for communities to do as well, we begin to see the power of vulnerability actualized. We get to see vulnerability actualized. Is when we show up in class, when we share at Sacred Circle. It's even when we come on a little bit early and chat together about what's going on with things in life, or we show up in person and are able to talk together. So I kind of came up with 5 tips that on building community through vulnerability. So let's go on a little bit of a story. Imagine that once upon a time, there was a group of people who wanted to build a strong, supportive community. That they knew that vulnerability was the key to forming meaningful connections, but weren't sure how to go about it. So these are the 5 tips these people discovered. 1 is to share your own struggles and challenges. By opening up about your own vulnerability, you create a safe space for others to do the same. 2, listen with empathy and without judgment. When someone shares something vulnerable with you, resist the urge to offer advice or criticism. Instead, simply listen and validate their feelings. 3, encourage others to share. Create opportunities for others to speak up and share their own stories. This could be through structured activities like group discussions or more informal settings like social events. Weren't we talking earlier about having a fundraiser? 4, celebrate vulnerability. When someone is brave enough to share something vulnerable, celebrate their courage and strength. This reinforces the idea that vulnerability is a positive thing, not a weakness. And 5, so we've talked a bit about this today. Angela started us off on the feeling of gratitude. Practice gratitude, expressing gratitude for the people in your community and the moments of vulnerability that they share that can strengthen those connections even further. So in the end, this group of people discovered that building a community through vulnerability takes time and effort, but the rewards are worth it. They've formed deep and meaningful connections with one another and felt more supported and understood than ever before. Wouldn't that be the lovely story of CSL White Rock? That our community was here to support each other and to be part of, and to be able to show up vulnerably and not worry about being judged or criticized. And that is why we're here, to be part of, to grow, to do that inner work, to live that vibrant life. Being vibrant and showing up and doing those things that bring us alive. And that vibrant life, whether within ourselves and within community, it starts from the inside, looking outward, not from the outside, looking inward. So Ernest Holmes, to finish off today, says, to meditate upon the presence is to indraw the universe into one's own soul. And you see that the inner work is to draw that universal in. And then from there, that is what is out pictured in that vibrant light, in that vibrant life. And it starts on the inside and following our heart and doing those things that bring us alive. So is there something that brings you alive that you'd like to contribute to the community? I remember last year, Shelley did a lovely scavenger hunt in the park where we got together and explore. And next Sunday, we're going to be together and do a fun thing of painting rocks. Whoops, you can't really see, sorry. And that is part of it, and where we can talk and share and be together. Let me just make sure I've covered everything off there. I think so. But being vulnerable takes practice. And it calls us to be uncomfortable. It requires looking at ourselves and others from an expanded view, seeing the connection that is present and the value of creating space for that connection to thrive. And I know that is one of the main reasons I joined CSL White Rock, is I wanted the connection, the community, also along with the learning and the teaching. So it brings it all back in to being seen, showing up, seeing others, and creating that space. So let's all move into prayer, knowing that today is that perfect day. That day that I bring in and know that Spirit is operating in, through, and as me today. That I am love expressed in this world. That CSL White Rock is the love expressed in this world. We are on a mission to create a loving, vibrant world that works for all. And that starts individually inside each of us. So today, knowing this truth that I am one with the one, as each person here on this call is one with that one, and we are each a divine expression, living this vibrant, loving life. I know it. I feel it. I bring that into my heart space, and I am expressing outwardly each moment. So today I claim that joy, that connection, that safety of being able to show up exactly as who I am. I'm so grateful for this community, grateful for this time together, knowing that there is this endless possibility for what is next. I open myself up to being others, into the connection of life and into the connection with my source, that divine essence that is right here, right now. I let these words go to the law of mind, knowing that right action is already happening. It is already so. I let it be and ask you to join me in saying, and so it is.
And so it is. Amazing. If I can just share, I was just going to say that being part of this community, I'm finally becoming the human that my dog thinks I already am. So that it's good. They're coming together. It's working. Anyway, thanks, everybody. So it's time to acknowledge our gratitude for this loving community. And as you know, White Rock, CSL White Rock is a nonprofit, and we depend on one another for support to grow our community. And there are a few ways you can support us by donating online at nobody uses W's anymore, csl-whiterock.com/donate. You can donate, of course, in our in-person gatherings. And please take a moment and pause in the feeling of gratitude, knowing that gratitude unlocks the gateway to abundance. And if you would like, please put your hand on your heart and affirm with me. I know that my giving blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. And the information is, of course, in the chat. So that's it. Please, please, please share us with all of your friends on all of your socials. We would love to see more people out there getting to hear, what we know, our music, our meditation, our wonderful speakers, our wonderful community. Please, please, please share, because we shouldn't be keeping it all to ourselves. So with that, thank you for being here today. I hope you have a glorious Sunday.